Okay, our next piece is to look at the responses Socrates makes to Cebes and Simmias. And I hope not to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to look at the larger kind of pastiche of how the thing is being played out. Okay, so you're not to worry about if you can't get all these particular arguments. I think the important points of the dialogue, at least for understanding of philosophy, have been made. But let's have just a brief look just to make sure that we don't sell these things short. Okay, so the first argument or objection was Simmias's argument. And Simmias says that if the soul is simple, it could just be like an harmony. And we understand that as kind of like a tuning of an instrument, the difference between an instrument being in tune and out of tune. And so the difference between a body with a soul and a body without a soul is the body with the soul has some kind of tuning, some kind of harmony of the parts together so that they're working together well. The arguments against Socrates are first is it denies the theory of recollection, because harmonies come into existence after the instrument is around, not before it, but recollection says the opposite. It also leads to absurdities because you would have things that could be closer, more in harmony, or less in harmony. So you have different kinds of souls, different degrees of soul. That seems kind of weird. Something is either alive or not. It's not partly alive or sort of alive. Um, there could be no disharmony caused by evil or contradiction, because you'd have to have a harmony with a disharmony on top of it. And finally, in a way that I think is probably the most revealing, at least from our point of view, is that the soul would not be able to act against the body. We couldn't uh, deny ourselves of some of our needs or our wants in order to gain something better. So no pain, no gain sort of thing. And if you look at that, I mean, the problem that I see with thinking of the soul as a harmony comes into existence after you do some things with some physical things. And so it's just too passive a picture of the soul. Our souls are active. They control our bodies. They run our bodies. They do things in our bodies to keep us alive. It isn't something that a body produces, but something that produces the body. So if you think about modern DNA, the body doesn't produce DNA, but rather the DNA, we understand it as kind of like a code or a computer code that's actually running the body. And the soul would have to be that, so it couldn't be a harmony. Even Dr. Frankenstein, when he created his monster, it wasn't enough to collect all these body parts and put them together in the right order. He still realized that he had to put life into it. He thought that was electricity, so he thought by shoving electricity into his monster, it would bring it to life. And that's what the story said, but we don't believe that. But the point about the soul is still correct. Souls are on top of a well-organized, tuned body. Okay, with Simmias, the response is a lot longer. Socrates, first of all, starts to give an account of his life and about how he, first of all, was interested in sort of issues about how the world works and how things are put together. And he began to lose interest to that and turn to more questions about the soul, about human life, about morality. And I think the point of that biography is to say that for Socrates, the meaning of things was revealed not by their physical constituents. If we could just figure out what everything is made out of, if you study any of the pre-Socratics, you'll see that's a lot of the kinds of things that they were looking at are things made out of water or air, or atoms or something else, but in which but rather the meaning to things is revealed by the mind, by what they are. Socrates calls this the form or the idea. And I'll post a link underneath this for a quick video if you want to follow up on this about forms, at least in Plato's thought. So if ideas are more important for figuring out what something is, and compare this to the last comments he made, then it's about the nature of ideas that we should be looking at. And ideas are what they are, and they're not their opposite. That would be another idea, and they don't go out of existence. Okay, so Socrates talks about things like tallness. Something is either tall or it's not. Uh, Talks about no idea being its opposite. It could never become its opposite. If black if something black turns to white, then the idea of black goes out of existence, and now the idea of white exists in it. And this would be true, he said, of the ideas in us and of the things that know the ideas. And there comes the soul. So the soul, he says, is what it is and can't be anything else. It can't slide into its opposite. And so if you're thinking about the soul wearing out, you'd be actually trying to maintain that the soul can slip into its opposite, the way tallness can become shortness. It's a little bit of a weird argument, but I think part of the point we want to see is that these arguments, these objections had answers. I don't know if Plato means, okay, we're done. I mean, now there's more objections and more answers to be had once we keep going, because dialectic keeps going. I mean, you get agreement, you figure out it for once, but tomorrow something else might come up and you might need to change your mind. So after both of these, we get to this rather important piece, kind of as a nice summary, which is where I'll end. But then, O friends, says Socrates, if the soul is really immortal, what care should be taken of her, not only in respect of the portion of time which is called life, but of eternity? And the danger of neglecting her from this point of view does indeed appear to be awful. If death had only been the end of all, the wicked would have had a good bargain in dying, for they would have been happily quit, not only of their body, but of their own evil, together with their souls. But now, inasmuch as the soul is manifestly immortal, there is no release or salvation from evil except the attainment of the highest virtue and wisdom. For the soul, when on her progress to the world below, takes nothing with her but nurture and education. And these are said greatly to benefit or greatly to injure the departed at the very beginning of his journey thither, which he's referring to somebody's death. A lot of Christian overtones in this, isn't there? And a lot of the early fathers of the church were kind of amazed that Plato would talk this way and thought he must have met Israelite prophets and got this idea from the Israelites. And what Plato seems to be talking about is something we might call a secular kind of salvation that focuses on becoming a good person for the sake of a good soul and for what that will bode for you in the afterlife. Okay, the final piece here is we'll switch back to Dr. Annandale for a bit, and we'll listen to the last scene, Socrates' last words, the last piece of his life, and his final demise.